You're listening to Apparently with Mr. Ganda, the podcast that explores life's uncut moments and helps you through them. I'm your host, Mr. Ganda. Let's see what we have in store for you today. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 6. Now, let me just take this opportunity to thank you all for subscribing, for downloading, for reviewing, and just supporting the podcast. I never thought I would even get a single listener, and I know if you've read my blog, 3 Cent Baller and all that stuff, it's all in jest, but really I do appreciate everything you're doing to support me. And let me get to my guests for this episode. I had the opportunity to interview author, life coach, and motivational speaker Daralyse Lyons. Over the years, Daralyse's interests and expertise have evolved, and she's become an avid speaker and transformational life coach, helping people to discover the stories that drive them. Her work rests on the belief that we are all storytellers and that the narratives we tell ourselves and others about who we were, are, and want to be shape our experiences and ultimately our lives. Daralyse works with her clients both individually and in groups to create different narratives that emphasize possibilities over pain and enable them to think of themselves differently and thereby create different futures. She's also a prolific author. She has penned over 20 books, people. 20 books. Now, this is somebody that dropped gems upon gems during the episode. And this episode, I hope you take away all the gems from this episode, because there's so many people. I know I did. And Black Brother, if you're out there, this is all for you. This whole thing is for you. I hope that you take the things that you need out of this episode to grow, to be a better you. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the culture. It's all about my brothers. And for my sisters as well, you're going to benefit a lot from this. There's not a single piece of gem that will not help somebody grow. And just realizing that sometimes the people you need around you to help you grow, it's not just your relatives, it's not just your partners. You sometimes need that outside voice that is there, that's all geared towards your success, because their success depends on your success. And I'm not saying that they need to ride on a coattail or anything. It's just because that's what they do. That's their job, is to make you successful. And when they fail at that, oh my God, guys, just listen to her, please. Let's kick it. Good morning, Daralyse. I already did my intro for you for the podcast, and I just want you to go ahead and tell the audience about yourself. Tell them, who is Daralyse Lyons?
Yeah, good morning, and thank you so much, Ishmael, for having me on this morning. I guess I would have to say that who I am is a storyteller at heart. I really believe that our stories shape our reality, and the way that we talk to ourselves about ourselves tends to be the biggest determinant of of how we live our lives, and how we feel about ourselves as people, and how we feel about our place in the world. So I like to refer to myself as the transformational storyteller, because I find that helping people transform their stories just has a ripple effect into every area of their life.
Oh, that's great. Definitely agree with that. And a lot of people try to identify themselves based on what other people see them as. So I'm glad you actually did. You said that. Um, Today, I already told the audience in the intro, this is just about how change is possible, but nobody will really know what we're talking about if we don't go all the way back. So I want to start out the first segment, which is Throwback. I want to go back to Daralyse at, let's say, I don't know, Daralyse at 13, the young Daralyse. Let's jump in and see where is she at right now in her life. If you could just take us through that stage in Daralyse's life.
Sure, absolutely. My teens were really hard. I was up until I was 11, I was the only child of a single parent, and so I had a lot of individual attention, and I felt very kind of cherished and very loved. Um, and in some ways, I actually think I had too much attention as a child because I kind of thought that I was the center of the universe as a little kid, and I just had a lot of adults around me and a lot of love in my life. And then my favorite aunt got leukemia and died. And shortly after that, many of my relatives began to move away and get married and all that. And so I stopped really feeling like everybody's focus. And then my mom, who it had just been the two of us for most of my life, she met a man, and he wasn't a very nice man. I like to say he put the dick in dictator. I mean, he was he was kind of a
Oh,
jerk.
wow.
Yeah. And so she met him, and they got married, and they had my sister. And all of a sudden, I went from feeling just really cherished and important and like the center of the family to feeling like an outsider. And so, going into my teens, I I didn't feel like I had people I could really talk to about things. I mean, I was popular and I had friends and everything, but that locust of love that I had as a child, it felt like it wasn't there anymore. And so that was right at the beginning of, in my sort of like age 14, 15, I developed an eating disorder, and then I started being very promiscuous. And so 13 would have been like right in the heart of the emotional action where I was just feeling unloved and feeling dejected, but I
Mhm.
didn't really know what to do with it. And I didn't really know kind of where to turn to get the answers. So I think I turned to maladaptive coping mechanisms. So that's sort of where I was in my early teens.
Oh, wow. So I know there are a lot of people that in that position right now. And you mentioned that between 14 and 15, you developed a eating disorder.
Yes.
Um, so that's basically what you started using as a coping mechanism, if I get that correct. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that whatever people's struggles are, right, whether it's food or sex or alcohol or drugs, it starts off as a solution to a problem. It starts off as a way to feel better, a way to take the edge off the pain, a way to feel control or to escape feelings or what. I mean, I think it's different for everybody, but in the beginning, it feels like the solution to the problem, but then over time it becomes a deeper, more significant problem in itself.
Yeah, definitely. And so we're still in the past right now. So at what
Yeah.
point did you think you started saying, well, okay, maybe I should stop this thing that I've been doing for so long as far as the eating disorder. I know it's not a thing that you can just stop overnight. I know some people seek help, and
Yeah.
I know I have a friend who's still going through it, and we're there to support him. And this, which is actually a big thing because a lot of people don't realize that men have things like eating disorders as well. Because I
Yeah.
guess, yeah, because we're just guys that just say, well, they can handle anything. So there's no way they're going through things like this. So at what point did you realize, after I'm pretty sure everybody else has been trying to be there for you, did you realize that maybe I should start working as hard as these people are to try to
Yeah.
see where we can change?
I think one of the interesting things about human resolve is that it comes and goes and then comes
Mm-hmm.
and goes. And I'm reminded, I mean, how many of your listeners, right, like have said to themselves, I'm going to start a diet on Monday morning, and then they start it, and by the time Wednesday rolls around, like, the diet, the resolve is there, and you don't, you're not doing it anymore. So for me, it wasn't really an issue of getting the motivation to change. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
had that motivation again and again and again. And I was in inpatient treatment 18 times, in long-term inpatient treatment for the eating disorder, 18 times between, I want to say, the ages of like 17, 18, and 26. And I checked myself into treatment all those times. Nobody else made me go. I wanted to get better. But what would happen would be I'd want to get better until life got hard. And then, I'd give myself permission to just like use the symptom once, or, like lose a few pounds or whatever. And then it would take on a life of its own because there's an addictive quality to the eating disorder. So I think the real question for me isn't so much, when did I want to get better? It's when did I make the unconditional decision that no matter what happened,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going to use that coping mechanism anymore. And that happened, in my late 20s, where I just like really said to myself, you know what, I want a life, and I don't care what happens. I'm not gonna binge or purge or starve or over exercise or whatever, anymore. And when when that shift happened, I actually felt more crazy for a while, Ishmael, because it was I couldn't, I couldn't take the edge off my emotions in the way that I was used to. And I feel like when I made that fundamental decision that I was going to change, my
Yeah.
whole story had to change with it. Like I no longer saw myself as this anorexic bulimic person. I saw myself, I'm not sure exactly what I saw myself as at the time, but there was a huge shift that had to happen in terms of my self identity, in terms of like just what was permissible for me, and I feel like that was really the beginning of me embarking on this new life that I live today, that I really, enjoy and love. But it was definitely my late 20s when I just said, you know what, never again. Like, I'm never again gonna go back to that place. This isn't my story anymore.
And I'm glad you actually said that. It's not really about when you say, "Okay, I'm getting better." It's when you actually know and you say, "Well, regardless of what happens, this change is gonna happen," and you
Yes.
just sticking to it. And I know a lot of people that are at that stage right now where they're not really sure of the plans anymore because they've stopped doing what they're so used to doing, and now they feel unsure every time they take an action. And I would say I just got over that stage where with this podcast is something I've thought about for years,
Yeah.
and I was like, yeah, maybe I don't want to do it because so many people doing it. And then one day I just woke up and say, okay, I'm just gonna do it regardless of what happens. I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. Got everything ready, jumped on the computer, got the mic on, and just started talking. And
Yeah.
from then, I never actually looked back. And I said, well, hey, if I get guests, I'll get them. And I'm glad I have somebody like you on the show. And just hearing what you have to share with the audience, it makes everything worthwhile. Saying, well, yeah, I'm glad I actually took that step and never looked back.
Yeah.
A question to say, hey, is this what I should be doing? But I guess you say that's just life. When you change, you're not always going to be sure about everything that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and
yeah.
when you made that decision, and you did jump on, and you started the podcast, and you started to just sort of talk, and regardless of what the results were, what did it feel like for you to take that leap?
It was a big relief. It was like this heavy load had been lifted off of me. It's because it's been years I've been I got to add everything I needed to start the podcast. All I needed to do was actually just make that decision and say, yes, I'm going to go for it. And I had several recordings I've done before, but then I would listen to them over and over and over and just decide, well, no, it's not good enough. But then
Yeah.
one day I just woke up and say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. And after that first episode was published, it was like just this heavy load was lifted off of me. And it's been great so far. So
Yeah.
far, it's been great.
And I think that's the feeling that comes from not just trying to make a change, but really making an internal transformation. I think that's the feeling. Like, I know for myself and for all the clients that I work with and things, like it's that moment when someone just steps into their new identity, steps into the person that they were meant to be. I feel like it's always a relief. It's fear, 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 fear up to that point. And then when you finally do it, it feels like, oh, this is like, it's like a coming home of sorts. It just feels like, oh, this is who I am now. And it's not necessarily easy from that point on, but it feels way more authentic than to
No,
not make that change.
definitely, I agree with you. And that's actually going to have me segue into the next segment, which is for the
For
culture. And
the
you're a
culture.
prolific author, transformational life coach, and a speaker. And I know you have about 16 books now that you have
I have,
published.
I have 20. Yeah, I have
20.
20 books now that I've written and sold to publishers. So either they're already out or there's a few that are, coming out within this year. But yeah, I definitely write quite a lot, and I'm lucky enough that people want to read my stories. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, we've gone through how you had an eating disorder and up to the stage where you decided, well, yes, the change is going to happen regardless of how you felt about it.
Yeah.
And now we have the release, the author, the speaker, the life coach, um, which means there was a period, yes, you were going through the change, but what got you into writing, and when did you decide that, okay, I want to be a writer, I want to be a life coach, I want to be a speaker? So please just share with us like that transformation where
Sure.
you made that decision.
Yeah, so I feel like I didn't really make the decision to become a writer. I feel like writing is who I am, and it was when I was 5 years old, I used to write. I used to get into trouble actually because after bedtime I'd be under the covers with my flashlight and my pen and my notepad, just like making up stories and writing things down, and it was always who I was. I do comedy improv. I was always like a performer. I always liked to feel things in a big way and to tell stories, and then when I got further away from myself and I developed an eating disorder and I felt very alone, I got away from that part of myself. And I worked in finance for years, which is not who I am, Ishmael. Like I'm not really a numbers person. I'm a feelings person
I
and I'm
feel
a
you.
stories person. So yeah, and then I feel like when I got into recovery and when I started to live a more authentic life and be truer to myself, and when I didn't have food as an escape mechanism anymore, or starving or whatever I was doing, like I, I kind of I feel like that aspect of myself that I had lost, it found me again. And then I started to write a lot, and I just I loved it, and I'm still in love with writing. I mean, I think it's one of the things in my life that I'm so passionate about that I couldn't really imagine a life without it. And so yeah, that's the thing that fills me up. now. And then after becoming a writer and after experiencing, a little bit of success in the publishing landscape and getting my work out there, I started to realize that I wasn't the only one who had stories that were longing to be told. And I wasn't the only one who had, at one point, barriers between what I wanted to do and what I would allow myself to do. And so I kind of just stumbled into helping other people, and I love it because they say the best way to learn is to teach. And so in working with other people, I'm able to really help them achieve their goals, but also, like, being authentic is one of the most important things in my life. I don't want to be a hypocrite. So if I help somebody else overcome a fear and do something that they want to do, then I also can't let my own fears hold me back. And so it's really, it really becomes like this self-propelling cycle of the more I write and the more I tell my stories, I think the more clients I tend to attract who want to do the same thing or want to break through whatever their fears or barriers. And then the more I work with others, the better I get at my own craft. So it's a really fulfilling cycle as opposed to the cycles I used to be in, which made me feel very empty and alone and afraid. And these make me feel very full and connected and make me feel like I have a purpose in life and I'm contributing something.
That's great. And so one thing that I've come to realize and again, I just want to go back and just focus on like men and to
Yeah.
be more specific, men of African American ethnicity or African background. We tend not to accept that sometimes we need somebody like you, a life coach, to just help us put things in perspective, to
Yes.
realize some of the things that we are doing that is hurting what we want to be or that is uh, being an obstacle in our lives. And so we just stay back and say, well, I got this. I can do it by myself. I don't need anybody. But as a life coach, I'm pretty sure you've met people, have interacted with clients who were in that stage where they felt like, well, I can do this by myself. But eventually, either somebody convinced them or they realize that, hey, I need this help. Let me reach out to Daralyse and see how she can help me see
Yeah.
things from a different perspective. And I keep telling people, I said, I want this podcast to be for everybody, but I still want it to also focus on Black men because it's so hard to find sources where we're telling each other to say, hey, brother, you need to build up, you need to walk through these things with experts, people experts in their fields that can help you get to where you want to go. It's not just about you being tough
Yeah.
and having that persona, I'm a man so I can handle it by myself. So just share, I mean, you don't have to go into details, but share some of the obstacles that some clients have shared that you
Sure.
think we as Black men can benefit from.
Yeah, I think you're definitely onto something. Men and yes, African American men, but I would say, a whole lot of men are taught, I have to do this on my own. I would say that the bigger stumbling block that I come across in men is a sense of duty and responsibility, that they feel like really kind of beholden to the people in their lives. So a lot of men might be working jobs that they're miserable at, but they feel like, you know what, I can't really become an entrepreneur, or I can't really follow my own passions because, I have to pay the bills and I've got a wife and I've got kids. Or, even if they're single, they feel like, well, I want to be that man with money in the bank and with, like those kinds of things where they kind of feel like, okay, I might have this dream or I might have these desires, but I'm not going to go for what I really want because I owe it to the world or I owe it to the people in my life. to be the guy I've always been and to do the things I've always done and to deliver, this amount of money or what have you. So I feel like duty tends to be a really big hang up for guys that I come across. And one of the things that I work with them to help them really shift their perspective is, you know, I believe that we all come into this world with unique talents and skills, and that we all have a purpose in life, and that if we can align ourselves with that purpose, amazing things happen, not just for us, but for the people in our lives. And so I think for men, sometimes changing that story from, okay, I just have to go to this job that I hate and, bring home this paycheck, changing that way of thinking about it to, if I'm doing what I love and I'm good at, I'm going to be making more money. I'm going to be contributing more emotionally to the people around me because I'll have more to give. I'm going to be an example, to my kids that they can actually be happy in life. They don't have to go through it miserable and unself-actualized. And so, I find that helping men to feel like they have permission to follow their passions in life and to follow the things that they're good at and to cultivate their talents. I think that really opens them up to a level of drive and enthusiasm that might not have been there before. And I find that once someone, men are really wonderful in terms of being like linear thinkers, and I think and problem solvers. And so I think that when a man changes his way of looking at things to say, you know what, this is who I'm meant to be, and I want to do everything I can to be the best me possible, then I think it gives him permission and opens him up to figuring out, okay, well, what help and what support do I need to get there? Do I need to hire a personal trainer? Do I need to work with a life coach? Do I need to read this book or change this thing? I feel like, if a man was going to fix a car, he wouldn't just go into it without a manual or without taking a class on cars, or like he'd try to figure out how to fix the car. And so I think that when it comes to making changes in a man's life, if he feels like, okay, this is something that I want to do, but also I need to do in order to be the best me possible and to support everybody I love and who loves me and who's kind of counting on me. When a man feels that way about making change and transformation, I think it does enable him to get the support that he needs to make those changes, and the information that he needs to make those changes.
Definitely, I agree with you 100% because, like you said, if you were gonna work on our cars, you're not just gonna jump in because one, that's never a good idea. Two, I don't think you want to drive that car after you're done
Yes,
because
yes.
I actually talking about that. I actually had that actual issue where the first time I try to fix a car by myself, I just like, well, how bad can it be? And I soon realized that it could be really, really bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'm glad you shared that because I think there are people out there. I know there are people out there that need to hear this from somebody who is an expert in her field to let them know that it's not a bad thing to seek help. And as men, we once we change that mindset, it's easy for us to just start going with that new mindset. It's not that complicated. I know my wife always tells me, say your brain is so simple,
Yeah.
and yeah, say you just have to think the right way. That's all. I guess that's what she's just trying to tell me. Hey, change your mindset, and you see what I see.
Yeah.
But and she actually was one of the people that pushed me for the podcast. Say, hey, you. I know you don't feel complete right now without doing this, so why not just do an episode and they actually publish it and see? And
Yes.
once I did that, yeah, and once I did that, that's all it took. Because I had the episodes before, it's just I never published them, so I never felt like okay, it meant anything. It was just I record. The same thing with writing. Like I told you the last time we spoke that I wrote some stuff, and because I never shared it with anybody, I don't feel like, oh, it's anything. I felt like it's just one of those scribbles.
Mm.
But I don't know if maybe if I start sharing it, maybe I will actually realize how much I loved writing.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So
Well, and I think and how much you love writing, and also how much what you have to say matters to other people. And I think that that's the piece where sometimes, if someone's struggling with, I don't even know if self-esteem is the right way to say it, but just a feeling like, oh, well, this isn't going to be good enough, or nobody's going to want this, or whatnot, or, who am I to say these things or put myself out there? I think sometimes as the more you start to put yourself out there, the more you really see the contribution that you're making in the lives of others. And then it almost feels like, who am I not to put this stuff out there? Because what I have to say, people are hungry for it and they want it. And, readers are reading my books or people are listening to my podcast or what have you. And then it kind of feels like, oh, wow, well, I owe it to these people to keep generating content and to keep saying, to keep telling the stories that I'm meant to be telling, because I feel like, duty and obligation is not a bad thing when you can use it to be the person that you're meant to be and to contribute in the way that you're meant to contribute. I think where it gets us into trouble is when we use it to play small in the world.
exactly. I believe that the term that that is being used nowadays for that is that imposter syndrome,
Yes.
where you feel like, well, all these people are so big, and they feel whatever they're doing. Like, I know I listen to several podcasts, and these people have thousands and thousands of downloads and 300,000 followers and listeners. And I guess I was in that space where I thought, well, if they have all that, who am I to actually start doing a podcast? Who's to say a single soul is even going to listen to me? And do I think I'm worth it for somebody to spend that maybe hour on the train listening to my podcast? What makes me so listen worthy, I guess? So I found out the term of the feeling was the imposter syndrome, and actually it's from another podcast I was listening to,
Yes.
and somebody mentioned it. I was like, oh wow, so that's what this is.
Yes.
And yeah.
Well, and interestingly, I would argue that being an imposter is really doing the thing you don't want to be doing and pretending to be happy, doing things that don't make you happy. I actually think that's more of an imposter than really shooting for what you want. And you know what I mean? Because it's like, but we do feel this sense of, okay, I'm not good enough. And there's a Marianne Williamson poem that I really enjoy. And I think the opening line of it is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. And I feel like, people are both afraid of success and of failure in equal measures. So, nobody wants to take that leap and fail. But also there's something kind of terrifying about stepping into the shoes of success, because, that feeling of, oh, wait, I don't really deserve it, or I don't really belong. And, everybody starts somewhere. Most of the people that have podcasts that have 1 million followers, they didn't start off with 1 million followers. They didn't move from celebrity in one medium to celebrity in another. They built their following by adding value. And I think if you can focus on the value that you're adding, it gets a little easier not to feel like a fraud and not to feel like an imposter, because you know that what you're delivering could be useful to someone if they just plugged into it.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm glad you actually mentioned Marianne Williamson, because I think I know the poem you're talking about. I think so. I forgot the title. Something about deepest fears.
Yes,
Deepest fears.
yes.
Yeah. So somebody shared that with me was a while ago, and because we are having this conversation about imposter syndromes and everything, and he told me, he said, check out this forum, it'll really answer all these your questions. And I'm gonna share it with everybody. If people are questioning whether they're good enough to do what they want to do or the things that they know they will love doing, go ahead and check it out. It's called Our Deepest Fears.
Yes, yes.
And it really answers that question. So shout out to Marianne Williamson for that.
Yeah.
And it's it's so refreshing hearing somebody like tell the audience the things that maybe family sometimes, just because they're trying to support you, they don't share that with you. I love family being part of a family is awesome,
Yes.
but sometimes they tend to not want to hurt your feelings, and they know you look miserable in a job or something, but they feel like you believe that's what you need to be doing. So nobody's going to point it out to you that, hey, you really love to sing, why don't you try to pursue that? Because they know you think, well, I have to work, I have to take care of kids, I have to take care of my family, so I'm going to be doing accounting, which I don't like. I'm gonna go to work and be miserable for the next 8 hours, come home and then complain about work for the next hours till I go to sleep and do it all over again
Yeah.
in the morning.
Well,
Even though, yeah,
oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, so like even though if I just pick up that mic and just even if I'm just doing karaoke, like my life feels so much lighter just doing that. And your family see that every day, but they don't want to stop you from doing what you think it's your duty to do. So that's it's a tough place as a family member to be, because I know I've seen family members, relatives who go through this, and I ask myself, do I want to mention to this person to try doing what they love? I have relatives who, because coming from an African home, we taught that you're either a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, or you know what talking about
Yeah.
to friends. So I see people fighting to get into medical school, tried several times with the MCAT exams and just keep failing, but just keep pushing and pushing because they believe that's what they should be doing. But then they're great artists; they can reproduce anything by memory and everything. But I question myself: do I tell them like, "Hey, maybe you want to pursue art, or and stop struggling with this medical dream because your parents have told you that's what you're going to be since age one, and they've drilled that into you, and now you're in your 30s and you're still trying to get into medical school."
Yes.
So yeah, so that's a dilemma sometimes I think our relatives go through, worrying, should they share what they're seeing or should they just wait and see if we can just figure it out on our own?
Well, and I think it gets even more complex when you're talking about family, and you bring up a really good issue as to why I think having a life coach or a therapist or someone, having a system of support where the person is invested in your success, but they're
Mm-hmm.
not like in the middle of the action. And I think what happens with family is, they have their own fears, they have their own feelings. And so you might be married and your wife might feel like, no, no, I really want you to stay in this job even though you hate it. And she doesn't mean bad things for you. She doesn't want to keep you down or keep you stuck, but she has her own fears of, well, if my husband becomes an entrepreneur, what's going to happen to the family? What's going to happen to our budget? What's going to happen to our money? Well, are our kids going to suffer or whatever? And so I think that what happens sometimes is if someone's right in the middle of the situation, they're not always best equipped to help support you, or to help you kind of problem solve. Or they might feel like, you know what, I know my husband sometimes has struggled with depression in the past. And so if he takes this leap of faith, and it doesn't work out, even though I believe in him, if it doesn't work out, then is he going to be depressed again? And so that person might tell you, you know what? No, 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 you don't even try that, or you don't even need to go there. And they have nothing but your best interest at heart. But I feel like with family or, significant others or kids or parents or whatever, sometimes people are almost like they're too invested in you to be able to help you see your path forward or to support you in taking those steps. And there's one really famous podcaster who I love, who he spoke about this because his wife was like his biggest naysayer in the beginning. And for years, she was kind of like, I don't know why you're doing this thing, and now he makes millions of dollars as a speaker and a podcaster and all that. And it's because he couldn't let his family be the only voice that was contributing, or his flashlight in the darkness. He had to go seek a flashlight elsewhere in terms of, colleagues and coaches and pastors and different people, because sometimes the people around you aren't the best equipped to help you forward. And also, they have all this experience of you being a certain way. I mean, I will tell you that for my family to see me not as the person with the eating disorder anymore and not as the sick one, that has taken so much longer than anybody else in my life. My friends, my colleagues, my clients, my students, everybody else in my life saw my new identity almost immediately when I made that shift. But my family, I mean, even still sometimes they'll say something to me and I'm like, you realize I'm not that person anymore, right? I haven't been that person for 10 years. But we have all this accumulated life history of them seeing me in a certain way. And so I think, I think family gets to be really a sticky situation at times, even if you have the most loving and supportive family in the world.
That is definitely true. Because, like you pointed out, because a lot of people, once they do go through that change, and then they'll see relatives and say, "Oh, I bet you never wanted me to get to this point." They don't understand that sometimes our relatives are not doing it because they want to hold you back, as you say. It's just because maybe the wife knew about your depression the last time you lost a job, and now no, you're not just losing the job, you're actually leaving the job now. What if whatever you're trying to pursue doesn't work, and now she has to be the one to be there to support you through the depression, which she will probably.
Yes,
It's just
yes.
just the toll it takes on you as the individual going through it, and she's just worried for you, and she wants to protect you from that. And that's what, as people, we need to understand sometimes when we're going through things, that not every no that we hear from the ones that love us means they don't care for our success. It's just sometimes they feel so protective over our lives that they feel like the best way is to keep you where you are,
Yeah. And a family,
because if you go where you're trying to go, yeah,
and
definitely, I see
a
that.
family is also a system. So if one person changes in that system, it really forces everyone to change. And so I think sometimes the fear isn't about, well, what if this person I love makes it big? I mean, your family might feel like, oh my, yeah, you're born to be a singer, you're born to be a podcaster or a writer or whatever, you've got this incredible talent. But I think some of the fear is, well, if you change, what does that mean for me? And what does that mean for us? And so I think that, it's not just about the people in our lives trusting us to make a change, but it's about us reassuring them that even within this change, you're still going to be important to me. You're still going to matter. Here's where I think sometimes when I work with my male coaching clients, they'll talk to the people around them about their vision for themselves, which is all well and good. But I think it's also helpful to ask the people around you, well, and here's where I see you in this vision. Where do you see yourself? Like I want to quit my job and I want to become an entrepreneur. And and you're so good at you're so good at sales and you're so good at marketing. Like, do you want to get on board with this? And do you want to help me sell my ideas to people? You know what I mean? Or you're so good um, at childcare, and I know you want to be a stay-at-home mom, and here's my, and within my 5-year plan, these are the returns I think I'm going to see on my investment, and it will enable you to do what you want to do. I think that's way easier to get family on board when you bring them into your vision and you co-create with them, as opposed to just sort of focusing on, well, I'm not happy at my job and I want to switch to something else, and you're not telling the people around you, and you have a place in this too. And I think people sometimes get really scared when you're talking about making changes that involve them, but you don't invite them into the process or invite them to be, to be part of it, or talk about what areas in their life they might want to shift, and you can be shifting together, from a spirit of love and co-creation, as opposed to just like a spirit of dictatorship or a spirit of fear.
No, definitely. I actually do like that because I would say I'm guilty of that. I never actually sat down with my wife and said, "Well, this is my vision about a podcast," and try to see how I can incorporate the things that she loves to do into that
Yeah.
vision. It's always been I've just been focused on, okay, this is what I want to do, this is what I'm doing. And even sometimes I get home at 1 in the morning, and I'll get downstairs, jump on the podcast, start editing and doing other things, probably about 3 or so before I go to bed. I never really thought about asking her, saying, "Hey, how can we get you involved in this?" Because we're a unit. Like you said,
Yeah.
a family is a system. Once one person changes, the whole system has to change.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really like that. But I don't want to have you share all your life coaching expertise
Sure.
with everybody. But so I'm just gonna take us into the segment. Time for the talk. I want you to share with us the projects you're working on, where the audience can find the books that you already have out, where they can purchase them, and what is next for Daralyse Lyons. And if somebody wants to reach out to you for live coaching or speaking event, how can we do so? And what are the channels that we can connect with you?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, and thank you for the opportunity to be on this podcast, because it's wonderful, and I do enjoy very much working with my male clients, because I think it's a nice yin yang sort of complementary thing. I think I bring a way of looking at the world to them that is slightly different,
Mm-hmm.
and vice versa. I mean, I really love and appreciate that. And to that end, right now I'm working with a few male clients on getting their books out there. They're working on books, and I have the privilege of working with them to help make that happen. So that's something that I'm working on at the moment. My website is www.daralyse.com, and it's DARALYSELYONS.com. And on there, there's information about my coaching, information about all of my books are listed. There's I do comedy improv, as I said, so there's information about that. It's a wonderfully interactive website. And there's a contact form. People can email me through that. But my email is daralyse@daralyselyons.com. I'm also on Instagram as Daralyse Lyons, and on Twitter as Daralyse Lyons, and then I'm on Facebook as the Transformational Storyteller. So I'm in a lot of places, but again, my website is a central location to get in contact with me, and that's www.daralyselyons.com.
Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna put that up on the post that's gonna accompany the podcast. I'm gonna put all those links up for the audience, for everybody to be able to connect with you, and to be able to reach out and seek your services. And I'm definitely gonna stay in
Yes.
touch because I feel like there's a lot I can benefit from having somebody like you in my life, because I've always been that person. I believe that I can do it by myself, and now I'm getting to a point where I'm realizing that yeah, you can't always do it by yourself. That's why these people exist. If you could do it by yourself, these people would not exist. So, and that's how I'm starting to look at things. It's like if there's somebody that exists that has this expertise, that means there are people out there that need that person. And my wife tells me I come up with these crazy explanations for things I want to do, but that's my belief. I say there at least exists because I need somebody like her to help me put things in
Yes.
perspective.
Well, and you
And
exist on the podcast because people need someone like you to be giving them, insights and expertise and information, even if you're just facilitating the information by bringing people on. So I think that really it does become an interconnected thing where the more you say, oh, I have to do everything on my own, well, then what you're saying is that everybody has to do everything on their own, and then nobody can add value to anyone else's lives, which when you think about it is kind of ridiculous, right? But that's the story that we tell ourselves. Yeah.
Exactly. I really appreciate you jumping on the podcast today. I know we had a few hiccups for our first recording, but I'm glad we were able to reschedule, and having you today. It's been really enlightening for myself, and I'm pretty sure for the audience and anybody that will ever come across the podcast. Um, Before I let you go, I just want you to, if there's one piece of advice that you share with everybody today, what would that be?
I guess the one piece of advice that I would share would be that the story that has brought you to the place where you are now, if you're not where you want to be, the story needs to change. Yeah, I think that would be my one piece of wisdom.
Ah, I like that. That the story needs to change. If you're not where you want to be, the story needs to change. That I'm gonna keep that, and I'm gonna run with that. But again, thank you for jumping on there, Liz, and I really, really appreciate it. And for those of you listening, please jump on and connect with Daralyse. You can find her books. I'll send you all the links once I finish everything up on this end, and I'll share it on Instagram, on Facebook, and Twitter. And of course, the podcast will be on SoundCloud, on iTunes, Spreaker, TuneIn, Spotify. So wherever you listen to podcasts, you will definitely find it. And I hope you can take as much as I did today from this conversation with Daralyse. Well, that's all for today, folks. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Apparent Little Mr. Ganda. It's always a pleasure having you. Please don't forget to review us on iTunes and share with your friends on all your social media platforms. If you have any topics you would like to discuss, please send me an email at info@mrganda.com or DM me on Instagram. If you have any guests that you would like to hear, please let me know. I'll try to reach out to them. Remember, my show is not perfect. I'm not perfect. Life is not perfect. If you accept this, thank you. If you don't, goodbye.